doesn't love a good top 5? I know I always catch myself watching them here on YouTube, and I figured what better way to bridge something I wanted to talk about with one of these types of videos. I wanted to talk about my top 5 favorite episodes of The Walking Dead because, well, we've never really done that on the channel, and there feels like no better time than the present. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you which one of these 5 episodes that I like the most. So I guess which one is my all-time favorite episode. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Starting out with number 1, we have Clear. Now, this is an episode from Season 3 that I think really set the tone for what The Walking Dead could become, and it really was the episode that made me feel so in love with the franchise overall. Clear is all about Rick looking for guns and ammunition, so he goes back to King County, and in doing so, he encounters an old friend, that old friend being Morgan Jones, who he hasn't seen since the pilot episode, which on screen was one of the coolest things we've got to see, because obviously we had no idea that he was going to be coming back. So to see him pop up in this random segment where some lunatic is just firing off from the roof of some building, only to be revealed that it's Morgan, was just truly wonderful. And what makes this episode even more special specifically is the dialogue that goes on between not only Lenny James, but also Abraham Lincoln. What's his name? Andrew. I don't know why I thought Abraham. I feel like I always do that. Regardless, it was an amazing scene, a collection of scenes that we got between both Lenny James and Andrew Lincoln. And as a side plot of that episode, so the B plot, was Michonne, who is relatively new to the group at this time. She goes off with Carl to recover a photo of Carl, Rick, and his mother. And there's something really special about that as a side plot because we get to see the development of not only Michonne but Carl as well. But overall, the episode just pans out so beautifully. And the dialogue, as mentioned, that we get between Rick and Morgan is just, it's truly masterful. And there's something about the world building in this episode where there's moments of fear, genuine fear with Morgan as well as Rick, in this apocalyptic vibe where Morgan's saying to Rick, I turned on my radio every day at dawn. Like, there is something just so eerie about that. It was one of the first times in The Walking Dead that I really feel like this world was just haunted or just empty and terrifying, and it was captured so well by masterful dialogue between the two of them. And not only that, there's deleted scenes of this episode online that you could see where Lenny James just really breaks down in what amalgamated to a couple minutes of deleted footage out of the scene shortly after he's talking about what happened to Dwayne, and it's truly amazing. I'm going to put the link to that down in the description. If you haven't seen it, you should really check it out. And I think overall, just everything about this episode was kind of more of just a one-off story, even though it told a tale that fit in the narrative of the arc of Season 3. It just was done just beautifully here. It could have stood on its own. It really could have. Clear is just, it goes without saying. It's a fantastic episode that easily makes my top 5. But going off the idea of one-off episodes and also going along the idea of Morgan Jones, we have another entry on this list, so my number 2 spot has to go to Here's Not Here. This is an episode that took place in Season 6 and featured a backstory of what happened in all the years that we hadn't seen Morgan, leading to him coming back into the story in Season 5 and Season 6 overall. And what we get here is the ending of Clear Morgan, and we see him trying to kill this man that he finds in the woods, only to realize that man would soon become his biggest mentor throughout the whole rest of Morgan Jones's character arc. You see, Here's Not Here tells a beautiful story about a man trying to redeem himself, and it's done so masterfully, just from every edition. I mean, we have a character in this episode, Eastman, who was only in one episode of The Walking Dead, and yet somehow managed to be one of my favorite characters in The Walking Dead. Someone I talk about as far as The Walking Dead lore all the time, and just overall, the story that this episode told, just like Clear, is just, it really could stand on its own. I mean, realistically speaking, if you were to ever make a movie, you could easily make a movie out of Clear and Here's Not Here, and then add a couple of extra scenes here and there, but it tells a beautiful story of a man who lost himself in the apocalypse and his road to recovery, and this episode just does such a good job of continuing that world building and also introducing characters in such a masterful way. I mean, this was at peak Walking Dead. I would argue that season 6 is probably the highest peak that The Walking Dead had, maybe not from a viewer standpoint, but just overall, I would say it's the peak of what classic Walking Dead was, and this was a prime example of how when it works, it really works. I can't speak enough. There's so many amazing things I could say about this episode, but it will forever go down as one of the greatest one-off episodes in TV history. It truly would. Now, unlike the other two episodes that I've talked about where they are kind of one-off stories, my next pick number 3, is The Calm Before, which is a drastic change of pace from the earlier seasons of The Walking Dead, as well as just everything we've talked about so far. Season 9, episode 15 adapts one of my favorite moments in the comic books. It's easily the most memorable moment of the comics, aside from, I would say, Negan's introduction. But that is the Whisperer Pike lineup scene, and it's just done so well on screen. So the episode follows a community fair that is held between all of the different communities from Oceanside, the Kingdom, Alexandria, the Hilltop, all of those. They all come together for the first time in terms of the episode, the first time in years. They're all coming together as communities and celebrating the life that they have. But little did they know,
it's almost like we have an imposter among us.
And that is Alpha. And my God, Samantha Morton in this episode just did such a phenomenal job of infiltrating the group. Her acting was top notch in this episode overall. And just throughout it, we get a really fun story of Alpha taking people inevitably to their fates, and it's done so well. The music at the end of the episode when it's revealed who is on the Pikes is just so iconic in The Walking Dead, which is crazy to say because for the last couple seasons prior it wasn't so strong. I mean, there was a couple tracks here and there, but I gotta say, the Whisperer Pike lineup scene, it was just so strong, and the acting from everyone in it without Rick was just incredible. This was the episode in season 9. Obviously, there were others, but this was the episode in season 9 after Rick's departure where I was like, you know what? These characters can carry it without Rick, and it made me feel very confident. There was, of course, other episodes that made me feel that way as well, but this one really solidified it. And obviously, I didn't love season 10 and 11, but it just goes to show that with good writing and good storytelling, it doesn't matter who the main focus is, and that's why I loved this episode. We didn't have Rick at the forefront, he wasn't even there anymore, but we had some of our other core characters delivering some excellent, masterful scenes in this episode, and it was just so good. Carol stands out in this episode, Daryl does as well, and of course Alpha. They just all kill it in this episode, and even Sadiq, I'd have to say, his speech at the end, everything we got of him, it was just so well done. And even though I didn't love the Pike lineup, like who was on the Pikes, but even though I didn't love that, and I loved it more in the comics than I did in the show, I could acknowledge that it was really well done, and it was my favorite comic book scene brought to screen, and it was so great to see, and it really did deliver. I'm glad that this late in the show, when people started to think that it diminished in quality, I'm glad they could deliver something masterful like this, because it really just stood out, and I'm so happy it exists. On to my number 4 entry, and I gotta be honest with you, I am cheating a bit here. So I technically have 6 episodes on this list because I'm pairing the 2 of these together, and I think it makes sense the more I'm going to talk about it. But my number 4 entry on this list is actually 2 episodes, and it's The Last Day on Earth and The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. Now, yes, by all means, these are 2 separate episodes, and obviously, you know, as a Walking Dead fan, The Last Day on Earth is probably one of the most iconic episodes in The Walking Dead history, both from a awesome standpoint because it was good, but a very notorious one because if you were watching live every Sunday, the cliffhanger at the end of this episode was absolutely abysmal. And that's specifically why I'm pairing it in with The Day Will Come When You Won't Be is because they really do go hand in hand together. It's nearly impossible to talk about one without talking about the other, and it's just it's so amazing. It's what we got following an entire season, really, I'd say a half of the season, building up to who Negan is. Who is this guy? Well, we finally get that reveal in one of the most masterful ways ever. We get the introduction of Simon in this episode. We get a story of Rick and his group trying to just drive somewhere for Maggie, and along the way, they get stopped by the Saviors at every turn, and they're clearly being herded into one central area. The whole episode focuses on that, and at the conclusion of the episode is my favorite 5 minutes in The Walking Dead history, point blank period ever, and that's Negan's introduction and his monologue. Specifically, I really like the Blu-ray version where we're allowed to hear Negan curse, which would have been great if the same streaming rights existed back in this season, because it would have been phenomenal if we all got to see Negan's uncensored speech live on TV. Oh my god, don't even get me started. That would be incredible, but it doesn't even matter. Without curse words, believe it or not, I think it worked just as well because it made him seem all the more serious without all the F-bombs that he dropped in the uncensored version. So I have to say, even for it being censored, it was just done so well. It really added to the scare factor of Negan as a villain, and that overall, the monologue to me just sells the episode. But there's also some other moments, such as the interaction with Rick and Simon when he's talking about, like, everyone in the van and you should be thankful because you never know if it's someone's last day on Earth. That was just masterful. Everything about it was just so well done. Specifically, another shot I loved in that episode was as soon as they're running into the clearing, all the lights come on and the whistles that you hear from the Saviors. Those moments are just ingrained in my head in the Walking Dead iconic elements. It really is a just perfect episode in every which way. It is like the ideal Walking Dead episode. It really is. And unfortunately, the only thing holding it back is a really horrible cliffhanger. But guess what? I actually wasn't watching The Walking Dead live on TV at this time, so I never felt the pain of this. I just rolled right into the next episode, and that next episode is The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. And what can I say about this episode? I mean, for me, like I said, as someone who streamed this, so I didn't have to wait nearly a year or whatever to watch who didn't make it out of that scene, I gotta tell you, I loved it. I didn't have any problem with the cliffhanger stuff. I knew it existed. I heard about it online, and believe it or not, I was spoiled with who ended up getting the bat. So I kind of knew that going in, and I'm okay with that because honestly, what we got here didn't matter if I knew who was going in. It was just so well done. I ultimately think if I didn't know who was, going to be the victim of Negan's bat, I think I probably would have hated a lot of this episode, but still, even then, recognized how strong it was because that's really what it is. This episode was so strong just on every front. It's an immediate continuation of the story that we got in The Last Day on Earth, so there's not really much additional to say. Really, this episode just focuses on who ended up dying, and it was just so well done. I loved the cuts back and forth. I loved the story of Negan and Rick in the RV and all of that ensued. And then at the end, what we got was just so good. It was so amazing to see the way that Negan really delivers his power. And in this episode, it was just done so well with the whole Carl cutting off his hand thing and Rick with the snot coming down his nose, even though it was funny and all that. It was just, Andy Lincoln does just an incredible, he just does such an incredible job in this episode becoming hysterical. I don't know how he didn't deserve, or he didn't win anything for that, because it was just perfect. It really was perfect. But it was also perfect on Jeffrey Dean Morgan's part because his acting was phenomenal. You were terrified of Negan. We all were. And just everything that came after that, the story with Maggie and how they were like, Glenn is one of us too. We should bring him back with us too. It was just so beautiful. On all fronts, this was amazing, and it ended so wonderfully with that dream sequence that we got of everyone growing old together and all of that stuff. It was just so good, man. This, to me, really, I know it said season 6 was peak Walking Dead, but for me personally, These 2 episodes were tippity-top peak Walking Dead. It was the best The Walking Dead had to offer. And yes, I understand that's contentious given, the cliffhanger that we got in The Last Day on Earth. I totally get that. I really do. I never experienced it, so to me personally, I think these are the 2 best elements of The Walking Dead ever. And they really make up a top 4 spot, even though it's technically, this is like a top 6. But whatever, we're going to count them as 1. And then finally, my last entry on this list is another gimme. This is Too Far Gone. Too Far Gone is it's just incredible. On all fronts, we get to see the governor finally get defeated, but we also get to see the iconic death of Herschel. This episode obviously was the ultimate conclusion to the governor's arc, and some people say the governor's arc was the best elements of The Walking Dead. I'd happen to agree with you on a lot of that. I'm not saying he's my personal favorite, but I do think he was a fantastic addition in the series, and to see that ultimate conclusion, the bombastic conclusion, Rick's Too Far Gone speech, it was in a league of its own. It really was one of those episodes that just stood out and made The Walking Dead what it truly is today. I absolutely loved this episode. Everything we got from the emotions we got of course, Herschel leaving us was so sad, because at the time Herschel was my favorite character, so it really was unfortunate to see, but overall it was just done so well, and it was just in general a fantastic conclusion to that entire arc. I loved every minute of it. But yeah, that's the list. That's my top 5, really 6 episodes of The Walking Dead. My God, there's so many in here. It was really hard to contain them to just 5. That's why really there's 6 and all of that stuff. But now I get to tell you which one of these is my all-time favorite episode. And I can tell you, my all-time favorite episode of The Walking Dead is Clear. It's not even close for me. Clear just does such a good job of setting up this beautiful apocalyptic story about 2 people who have lost each other and have came back to one another in this ultimate comeback of fear and terror and just world building in an apocalypse. It's such an incredible episode. It really is. I know this is pretty cliched in the Walking Dead universe for people to say Clear is up there and all of that stuff, but I gotta be honest, it was a hard pick for me to say it was either this or Here's Not Here. And yes, there's my bias. I love Morgan, but more or less, I love the story that was told with Morgan in these episodes. It was just so well done. It really was. It is at the epicenter of what makes The Walking Dead so special to me. Clear alone set the tone for why I love the show so much, and it really stands out among all the other episodes. It truly does. We have all the heavy hitters in there. We have Andrew Lincoln. We have Lenny James. We have Denai Guerrera, and we have Chandler Riggs. And I know some people don't like Chandler Riggs. I do. I personally do. I'm in that camp, and I know there's others out there. But just all in all, we have the heavy hitters in this episode, and we have a truly masterful episode. It really was. But yeah, that's the list. That's my favorite episode. Now I'd love to know what your top 5 episodes are. So if you could, let me know down in the comments. Let's start a healthy conversation down there, and I can't wait to see what you pick for your top 5. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like, rating, and subscribe for more Walking Dead content. And with all of that out of the way, thank you again so much for watching this video, and until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.